Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fully Spooled. I've been looking forward to this one for a very long time because I am starting the wiring for the chassis for the Lexus. I don't know the first thing about wiring other than soldering, very basic soldering skills and what I've learned online, but there's a lot that goes into wiring, and it's one of the things that I know the least about when it comes to cars. So I'm very excited to teach myself how to wire and learning about circuits and how to wire up relays. And there's so much that I got to figure out, but I'm looking forward to it. I also finally get to install my switch panel here, which I actually built this in January 2017, which is almost an entire year ago, because today is December 15th or 16th or whatever. Really, I've been looking forward to this. It's been in the car for a year just sitting, not being used. It was just embarrassing. So I'm very excited about making this. I'm going to make this first, and then I'm going to see what's kind of next on the thing. Shit. Alright, so as I was saying, I made this almost a year ago and I have not shown it yet on the channel, so I'm going to go into my archival footage from January 2017 to show how I made this first, and then I'll get this installed in the car after that. Also, there's so much involved in wiring a car, from all the different stuff in the back of the car to the front of the car to the ignition, all this kinds of crazy stuff. I'm not quite sure if it's going to fit in one episode. In fact, I'm planning on it being probably 2 or 3 episodes, because otherwise it's going to be like an hour-long just chunk of me wiring and cussing and stuff, which is no fun. So kind of bear with me as I figure out what part of the wiring goes in which episode, but there'll be a little part 1, part 2, part 3 to make it pretty clear. So anyway, let's hop into this guy first and then we'll go from there. So here's my template that I'm going to use. It's not exactly perfect. I'm going to make it more symmetrical when I trace it to the metal, but this kind of just fits right up in here, and then I'll just bracket it to these 2 bolts down here with these little L-shaped brackets I picked up from Home Depot, kind of like this, and then I'll just bend these brackets back to be the same angle as the panel here, so something like that. Alright, so this should fit. That's great. Look at that. Next, I got to figure out where this switch panel is going to go, which I assume is going to be like right in the middle there. And then looks like I have enough room here for like a bunch more gauges. I mean, maybe even like 5 gauges could go there if I needed them to. Plus, I have room for extra switches if I need them. Okay, this looks a little messy, but bear with me. This is where the dash was before I cut it, and this is where it is now. So really, it's just this rectangle right here is what I need. Oh, looks good. Alright, I really hope this works, because you can't really undrill a hole. There's one. Yeah. Alright, I built my brackets down here to fit just the right angle, so I'm going to mark these guys off and then drill some holes. There we have it all mounted up. I haven't bolted it all the way in yet because I need to do some modifications to this to add my kill switch pretty soon, so there's no point in bolting it in all the way. But I feel like it's going to be a nice, solid, sturdy mount right here. I do need to figure out what to do about this down here, because now that I have this big hole where this pops up, I gotta cover this somehow, so I'm still figuring out that whole thing. But in the meantime, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So here we have all the wiring from the car laid out on the ground, and it looks pretty messy and confusing, because it kind of is, but I do know roughly where things used to be, because this is the fuse box right here, so this used to be in the engine bay. These little circular grommets used to go through the footwell on the passenger and driver side, so that kind of goes to random stuff in the engine bay. The yellow cables over here are the airbag sensors, and this purple stuff went under the dash, and these plastic, this like big thick plastic piece right here went on the tunnel between the seats going to the back of the car. So I kind of know where everything used to be, and so my plan here is to kind of figure out where the connectors used to go to the things like the headlights and taillights, and then separate them out and find all my wire tail ends. So these wires right here are what used to go to the taillights, and I've gone in and started marking what each of these little pieces are right here. For example, here we have our stop lights, and then these are our taillights, I believe. Yeah, taillights. So this is what will be activated when I hit the brake pedal, and this is when I turn on my heads and taillights together. So I'm going through and figuring out where these trace to, and then up here we have the pigtail, the sensor for the passenger side taillight right here, and then the driver's side is right here. So basically I'm figuring out where these plugs plug into the taillights, and then just tracing all the wires through all the different things to figure out where the end goes, and then I can run those up to my switch panel. Alright, so here we have what's left of the brake harness. I have this side which goes up to the switch panel, so that'll go up there, and this side goes to the actual lights themselves. And originally this car used the driver's side for these lights to go up to the front of the car, so the harness here terminated on the passenger side, and then this side went over to the driver's side taillight and then up that way. But because this is a race car and I want to simplify things, I'm going to have all my wiring going through just one grommet. So the fuel pump, taillights, anything that goes wiring back here will go up to the passenger side only. So I'm actually going to flip my harness. Instead of it being like this, it'll end up being like this. It'll terminate here. And it's fine because, if I had turn signals, it'd be a problem. But because I have brake lights and reverse lights and tail lights only back here, I should be able to flip it no problem and not have anything be confusing. And as long as this guy plugs in, which it does, perfect, I can just flip that, and then everything will go up to my passenger side only, and then later on I can weld off the hole on the driver's side. So now all I gotta do is just kind of take some zip ties and organize this thing, and basically just get it as neat as I can going to the front of the car. Lights installed. Well, there we have the lights installed for the first time in about a year and a half, so I gotta say I'm pretty excited about that progress. I know it's something silly, but it's, looking like a car again, which is really something that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Alright, here we have the high beam wiring harness, and over here is the low beam and headlight wiring harness. And I don't know how they got all tangled up. I just pulled these things out the other day and they were perfectly straight. I cannot believe how quickly wires become into bundles of messes. But anyway, I'm gonna get my high beams hooked up, and then get my regular lights hooked up, and then run the wiring as smoothly and cleanly as possible back along here through the hole back there. And I know a lot of guys with the SCs get rid of the high beams, but I kind of like the look of, the quad headlight look, and that's kind of what Lexus started doing in the 90s, and it kind of took off for them, and they still do that same thing. And it's kind of strange seeing the SC with just the main headlights. So I'm gonna wire this up. And really, I weighed this thing. It's, not we weighed it, but it's, not even 2 or 3 pounds, so it really isn't that big of a deal. So yeah, that's the plan. So I have the wiring down here kind of tucked away as it would be from the factory, and I managed to pare down the wiring actually to just 3 wires per side. So we have red, this red line is the power for the actual projector. The green line is the power for the side marker slash, I guess turn signal there. And then we have the white, which is the ground, and that's the ground. White is basically used for the ground on all of this entire car. So anything that's white with a black stripe ends up being ground. So I can actually go through and just ground all of the white wires off. The same thing goes for these high beams here. The white ones are all, you know, from the factory hooked together, and then that goes to a ground. So I'm actually going to just tie all of these white ground wires in together and then mount them, I think, down here to the frame, kind of behind this piece here, which will be tied off down there to keep all my ground wires out of, you know, the way, so it's not, you know, making too much clutter, and it stays out of the way of direct weather, you know, like water on the track and stuff. And then for the power for all of this stuff is just going to be tied together in one point, which will go to this much thicker line, which I'm repurposing from the factory harness. And that'll go from here, just one line up to the switch panel inside the chassis. I hope this is right. Snip. Here's what I've come up with. We have our 4 wires coming from the headlights to this butt connector. I've soldered them all together. It doesn't look really pretty, but it's nice and solid. And then this goes into the blue wire here, which will go up into the switch panel. So I want to test this system out. And this blue wire I have going around up to my 12-volt battery source right here. And then I have this whole unit grounded out to the chassis here. And remember that all of my white wires down here are all grounded out to the bolt under here. So in theory, if I hit this switch right here, all my headlights should turn on, or I'll cause a huge fire. So hopefully it's the first of the two. Yes! Oh, that's awesome. I'm so happy it works. Alright, now I gotta wire these up to a relay, and then go up to the switch panel inside the car. Alright, here we have my connectors for my radiator fans on the driver's side of the radiator. I don't have an actual factory connection for this because my factory harness from the SC used a hydraulic fan, and these are electronic fans obviously. So I think what I'm going to do here is just snip these connectors off and use these little blade connectors instead. And I'll just, you know, wire these guys up into the actual wiring harness for the fans there, and then when I run my wires to the switch panel, I'll just have this little connection there so I can basically make this still removable if I need to. So yeah, that should hopefully be the easiest way to wire this up to my relay, and then from the relay to the switch panel. Alright, to make things easy for myself with the fans here, I decided to just wire the fans together. So this is the high-speed fan, and that's the regular speed fan over there. So what I'm going to do is install my little blade connectors here on each one of these guys, and then what I can do is crimp them on, and then I'll just have a new wire going to the ground, to the chassis for this one, and then this one will go from the power for the fans up and around through the firewall to the relay and then the switch panel. Alright, so I just crimped on my little blade connectors and soldered some of the top part here for each line to make sure it's nice and solid, and then I put some heat shrink on. So now I should be able to just heat shrink these tubes on there, and we should be good to go. So we have our power and our ground. I know that the fans work because I have my power wire right here, and I have it grounded out on that side of the chassis over there. And when I take my 12-volt power source and I attach it to this guy and turn the 12-volt power source on, the fans kick on. So that's really exciting. So for the fuel pump here, I've decided to remove the factory wire right here. This is the power and this is the ground for the factory pump. I think I'm going to remove this wire because it's a 16 gauge wire, and I think it's a bit too small for my AEM pump that I have in the tank. So I'm going to remove this and replace that with a little connector here that I can use with my new upgraded 10 gauge wire, and I'll just connect this to another side of this connector, and I can have kind of a removable, you know, connection there between the wire and the pump. And then for the ground cable, the ground wire, I'm just going to run this same wire to a place in the trunk. It should only be about a 2-foot length wire for the ground, so that should be no problem going into the trunk. But because this is going to go all the way to the dashboard, I'm going to have a bit thicker cable. Well, none of that went according to plan. Unfortunately, I ended up just mangling it, which I get for, you know, rushing through this and being on very low sleep. So I'm just going to go to option B, which is just soldering this directly onto my connection there. And hopefully that will be enough to keep it in place. Well, I just put a ton of solder into that, so I should be good. Man, that is a lot of solder. That is totally solid, not moving, so I feel pretty okay with that. I'm a little pissed off myself that I messed that up, but it's alright. It's going to be nice and firmly mounted forever. That looks terrible. Thankfully, no one other than you all, no one's going to see this because it's going to be behind the little plate right here, but that looks like crap, but at least it's going to work. Alright, well, it looks like total garbage, but it'll work. I'm not too worried about it. And as long as no one pulls the plate off and sees it or watches this video, you'll never know. Done. Moving on. Alright, now we're in the trunk, and this is the power wire for the fuel pump. I'm going to put that aside for a second and focus on the ground, which is right here. I attached a little eyelet, or whatever this thing is called, and I'm going to put it right onto the ground, the chassis right here, where the previous owner ground some of the paint down, I think for his subwoofer system. So I'm going to put that there, as well as the ground for the rear part of the harness, like the taillights and stuff, which is this guy. So I'll put these two together, and then attach it right to this little spot here, and we should be good. Alright, so we should be good for the ground there. That's not going to come loose. And so now we have our fuel pump and the rear part of the chassis grounded right there. And I'll clean up all these other wires in a minute. Alright, now the power line for the fuel pump can go up through the hole here with everything else. Alright guys, that wraps up part one of my three-part series in wiring up the SC. We have our headlights taken care of, as well as our radiator fans, the fuel pump, and then the rear end, you know, the reverse lights, tail lights, that kind of stuff, and then all the wires are run into the cabin. So up next for part two is going to be making my relay panel, as well as running all of the looms to run all the wiring to inside the car, as well as I have a lot of other wiring adjustments to make. I don't like how the current wiring goes through the huge massive hole on the passenger side of the firewall, so I'm going to be changing that as well. And then if you look, I have some other stuff done too, like my intake here, which will all be in a future episode, so please do stay tuned for that. Part two will be coming up pretty soon for the wiring, and then part three will be the battery install, kill switch, and some other fun stuff. So anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Fully Spooled. I'm going to skip over my subscribers ride for a few episodes because it takes a lot of time to do that, actually. I really want to focus on getting the car finished and getting my other episodes uploaded for the build series, and then I'll get back to that soon. So if you have submitted photos or video to me of your cars, I haven't forgotten you. I will do some episodes pretty soon. I may even do a subscribers ride only episode to get through a bunch of them all at once. So please do keep submitting that stuff. I love seeing it, and I'll get to that pretty soon. But anyway, in the meantime, thanks for watching. I gotta go finish up my wiring here and finish editing more episodes, so I'm gonna go do that right now. But please do keep watching. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, maybe share some videos around, and follow me on Instagram because I'm doing a lot of uploads on Instagram, and keeping people up to date there better than on YouTube, to be honest. So, but lots more coming. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. You coming in? Are you coming in the car? You can't fit, can you?